are. They can take advantage of this.
Being guarded by Duncan Robinson. The spin, Riley, fall away, count.
That's nice. That is nice, Chris.
These young Wizards putting on a show.
The Wizards beat the Pistons last night, Max, on the road.
What a world, man.
I don't know if people know this, but currently the Pistons are the number 1 seed in the East. They have the second best record in basketball behind Oklahoma City. Cade Cunningham did play last night. I believe he had 30 in the game, and yet the Wizards went on the road and beat the Pistons 126-117. This time next year, I'll be very excited about that result. This time this year, I'm not very excited about that result. Reason being, the Wizards have now won 4 of their last 6. They are 14-36 overall on the season, and they're currently in a position that is risky for them. They have the 5th worst record in the NBA. They need to finish with one of the 4 worst records in the NBA, or they will risk losing their number 1 pick, their first-round pick. Good morning, everybody. It is Super Bowl Friday. I'm actually growing very, very giddy about this game because I got a smell test pick on this game later on. You're going to know what it is based on the way I talk about this game. But I think this is a really good matchup. I think this has a chance to be a really, really good game. And I think people are viewing this incorrectly in terms of the masses, in terms of a lot of fans who just believe that after watching New England kind of limp their way through the AFC playoffs, kind of get lucky facing a backup quarterback, facing a Houston team whose quarterback handed them the game, facing a Charger team with a beat-up offensive line, that somehow they shouldn't be here. That may be true. And I do think there are teams in the AFC that are better than New England. It's not the way it works, though, in a one-and-done. Like, I think you play Houston and New England 10 times. Houston wins 6.5 to 7 of them. I really believe that. But not on that day. They didn't. And so New England is here. But I'm not a believer yet in Sam Darnold against a good defense that's well coached. So we're going to see Sunday how it plays out. I'm looking forward to this game. I think it's going to be a much better game. There's a lot of cool things about this matchup, and we're going to get into a lot of it. We haven't talked a lot about the game this week. We've had other things on our mind, including a rather large trade that was made with our NBA team. And yeah, this time next year, I expect the Wizards to be winning games like this. This from my guy, Jay, who writes, "You are out of your mind. Anthony Davis will play 14 games, and the Wizards will win 3 more than that next year. 17 total. Mark it down." Jay, if Anthony Davis plays 14 games, you're probably right. They're not going to win many games next year. My reaction to this trade was huge upside, very little downside, which is why I liked it. I liked it a lot. They didn't give up much. They got Anthony Davis. If Anthony Davis plays 60-plus games, 65-plus games, it's been a while for him. I understand that. Keep in mind, those of you just, perusing the games played list from the last several years, remember that 2019-2020 was cut short by COVID, and 2021 was an abbreviated, bubble schedule. So it's not like you should be looking for 82 those 2 seasons. I think they played 71 ultimately in 2020 and a lot less than that, obviously, in 2021. I get the whole Anthony Davis thing. I've made fun of Anthony Davis on this show many times over the years in the April, May, June timeframe. Somebody steps on his foot and he goes down like a ton of bricks. And he's over on the bench, and then there's a towel over his head, and then he's walking back to the locker room with somebody aiding him with a severe limp, and he's out 3 weeks. I get it. But when he plays, the teams that he plays on are much better. They're very good teams. And if they get Anthony Davis in his healthy glory, I think this team wins 45-plus games next year. I think they're vying for a top 4 seed in the East. And I think a win on the road against the Pistons, who will be good next year as well, is going to be like a really solid win, and it will happen frequently. I just didn't want it to happen last night. Jesus, God. Can I just say one thing? I didn't watch a lot of the game last night, but I watched the highlight package, the 9 minutes of highlights this morning. I really like Will Riley. I think Will Riley is a find. Illinois, end of the first round, latter portion of the first round last year. This kid's got a lot to offer. He plays hard. He sees the floor. He's versatile. I like the way he plays. I really like the way he plays. And what is he, 19? Is he 19 yet? Or still 18? Just turned 19 years. No, I'm sorry. He's 19. He's about to turn 20. He's a February birthday, as I am. And so Will Riley looks good. Trey Johnson didn't play. Obviously, Trae Young and Anthony Davis aren't playing, nor will they. They got to be careful here, man. They got to be careful because there are some bad teams at the bottom right now. Some really bad teams. They're one of them, but Brooklyn's terrible. Indiana's terrible because, of course, they lost Tyrese Halliburton. New Orleans with my guy Derek Queen, terrible. Sacramento's terrible. Utah's terrible. Dallas now is in tank mode. Keep an eye on them, Max. After they, cleared, the building to build around Cooper Flagg over the next few years, they want to lose. They've lost 6 in a row, and they would love to get into a position to add to Cooper Flagg with a top 3, top 4 pick. You got like 7 teams, in the race here for bottoming out. The Wizards have to finish in the bottom 4. And let me explain why, just in case you're not following it or have missed it when we've talked about it before. If they're not in the bottom 4, the possibility exists on lottery night that they could end up with the 9th pick or lower. And if that happens, they lose their first round pick. It's protected 1 through 8. If they finish in the bottom 4, there's no way, even with the worst of lottery luck, that they could finish with anything other than anything worse than the 8th pick in the draft, which means they would keep it. The 8th pick in the draft would be a major disappointment. And this draft is loaded, and people think there are 7 or 8, 9 players that could really make a difference here. This is why you've got to be in this draft. You have to be in this top. You really want to be in the top 2, so you have a choice of Peterson or DeBonsa, top 3, worst case with Boozer, and certainly, the top 4, worst case. The Wizards can't. This would be one of the all-time organizational blunders from an organization that's blundered its way through the past 47 years to lose this pick. This is one of those where anybody that says I can't root for them to lose, I get it more in the NFL with just 17 games every year. But even that, when you get to the end of the year and you're completely out of it and there's a regime change coming, I don't know how I don't know how you're rooting for Zerline to miss that kick so that you can beat the Jets and end up with the 4th or 5th pick instead of number 2 overall when you're desperate for a quarterback and you're about to change your entire, front office and coaching staff. I don't get that one. But when you're, you only have 17 of these and it's your team and you're invested, you like to see wins. I like to see winning over a sustained period of time. In the NBA, with 82 of these, you've got to be rooting for the Wizards to finish with one of the 4 worst records. And this is going to be a storyline here. It's not the storyline you like when you're in a town with an NBA franchise. Here we got to finish in the bottom 4. God, GD, they won again. What are they doing? They're not trying to. They're sitting key players here and there with, injuries. But man, this is actually in some ways a reflection of the job that Winger and Dawkins in particular, is doing. They're bringing in players that are, by the way, competitive. They got some dogs out there. I love Bub. I love Keyshawn. And I'm really starting to like Will Riley. These guys aren't trying to lose. They're trying to get paid. So how they probably have to go to Washington's football team's practice squad. They got to pick some players off that practice squad and put them out on the floor. They got to dig deep into their, into their go-go team and anything else they can find. This would be an absolute disaster if they're not in this upcoming draft. This is part of the plan, man. This would be really interesting if we got down to the final few weeks of the season and they were sitting, at 5th or 6th worst record in the league. How would they do it? Who would they put on the floor to ensure that they get their ass kicked? That's what we got right now with our basketball team. But we also have, sorry, Jay, at least some hope that next year, mid-October, late October, whenever the NBA season begins in 2026, in the opener at home against the 76ers, I don't know what the schedule is going to look like, that they trot out as a starting lineup Anthony Davis, Alex Sarr, Trae Young, Trey Johnson, and Bilal Coulibaly. And Darren Peterson, after being picked number 1 by the team overall, is over on the bench chomping at the bit to get into the game for the first time as an NBA player, along with Keyshawn George and Will Riley and a few others, Bub, a few others. I want to see that team. But I want to see Darren Peterson or A.J. DeBonsa on that roster opening night. And for that to happen, they can't keep beating teams like the Pistons on the road. Please, my God. I mean, there are going to be some games. They got Indiana coming up a couple times. They still play Utah twice. Some of these teams that they're in the hunt for, bottom 4, you really want to be in the bottom 1. So you have the best odds at the number 1 or number 2 pick. But bottom 4 keeps you clear from what would be one of the all-time organizational blunders. I don't know how you do it, man. I'm sure they're talking about it. They've done it before. These guys came from a situation where they went down this path. But it's playing too well right now with guys that, I don't think they're expecting would go in and beat Detroit. What was the number last night? They had to be a major double-digit dog, right? Had to be. Let's see what it was last night.
See 14.5, 15.5. So like 15-point favorites last night.
Jesus God. What was the money line comeback? +4 something?
Pistons minus 855. Wizards, plus 575.
Jesus. Wow. All right. I got this from Gary P. Gary P writes, Drake May is better than Jaden Daniels. Full stop. We did this conversation 2 days ago, Max. We put that out as a WaldorfHonda.com.
We did.
Poll of the day,
yes.
What were the results?
76.2% of people said they would take Jaden Daniels over Drake May. 23.8% said they would take Drake May.
I mean, I figured it would certainly, skew towards the hometown
bias,
quarterback. The question was if you had to go back and pick at number 2 in 2024 after Caleb Williams was off the board, who would you take? Gary P writes, Drake May is better than Jaden Daniels. Full stop. When did this full stop become part of our discussion? Seems like that's a big thing. Full stop. Like, that's it.
No nuance.
We're not moving forward. This is a full stop. What I just said is 100% true.
Inarguable.
I don't know when that became something. I hear it all the time. I should probably start using it. I kind of like it. Gary P continues after, Drake May is better than Jaden Daniels, full stop. I don't even need numbers to tell me he's bigger, stronger, throws it better, and runs it as well. And late Sunday evening, he'll have something Jaden doesn't have, a Super Bowl trophy and a Super Bowl MVP. Yeah, you're right. Jaden does not have it after one full season of playing in a few games in year 2. Not yet. He does not have that yet. And by the way, Drake May doesn't have that yet. But you know what? I think Drake May is going to have a Super Bowl trophy. I don't know if he'll have the MVP too, but I think the Patriots are going to win the game outright Sunday. I do. Yeah, look, this is a matter of opinion. I mean, it's fine. What I said the other day is what I've believed watching Drake May all season long. Despite the pushback on the schedule, which is true, despite the pushback on, well, my God, they did a phenomenal job basically tossing out last year's roster and putting together a completely new roster in 2025, 2026. It's a very good roster, not to mention it's a very well-coached team. This isn't the team that Drake May played on last year as a rookie. All of the pushback to diminish or to, take Drake May's performance this year and somehow minimize it, I'm not buying it. I think he was great this year. I watched a lot of New England this year because I had the opposite side so many times this year and lost, in smell test picks and betting personally against them. Every week it looked like the public just kept gaining more and more confidence that the Patriots were the real deal. And it just seemed like against bad teams, they were giving shorter numbers. And I was on some of those bad teams and they had chances and then they actually got it done a few times. But that aside, I watched and I'm like, wow, that's what you saw this year watching Drake May. Wow. He is big. He is strong. He does throw it really well. I don't think he throws it better. I think he throws it really well. And I think Jaden throws it really well. I think he throws a great deep ball. Great deep ball. And does he run it as well as Jaden? I wouldn't say that, Gary. I don't think many, honestly, in NFL history, quite frankly, run it as well as Jaden does. I mean, he's that rookie season you'd put on par with some of the great running quarterback seasons we've ever seen. Now, it's probably not some of Vic's seasons or even Lamar's seasons, but it's like in that next, it's the top of the next group down. But he certainly has the ability to do what they've done before. But he does run it well, Drake May. He really has great feel in the pocket, great feel as a runner. I think both of these guys are going to be great quarterbacks. I think in 10 years, let's, go to 5 years. I think in 5 years, we're going to look at this thing and say 6 1/2 dozen the other, man. They're both brilliant. What a draft at the top. And Caleb's going to probably be in that conversation as well. I think he will. Jaden, by the way, was out at the Super Bowl on Radio Row, and I'm going to play some of that sound for you on the show coming up. He had some things to say about various topics, including David Blau as his offensive coordinator, and I think he had something to say about Drake May. So we'll play some of that for you. But this does not have to be, even though we presented it this way for the purposes of creating the dialogue and the conversation and some Twitter poll results, courtesy of Waldorf Honda at waldorfhonda.com. I just think it doesn't have to be an either or. I think right now, as I look at both of these, I would take Jaden moving forward. But if I was given Drake May without a choice, I wouldn't be displeased. Full stop. All right. What Jaden said on Radio Row coming up. There were the NFL awards last night, so we know who the MVP is. It's not Drake May, but the voting was very interesting. And we got a lot more on the show. Obviously, we'll preview the game, pick it. I've got a smell test pick. Ben's going to join us at 12. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com. We are free and live, as always, on the Odyssey app. Last night was NFL Honors Night. It was televised on NBC. It's funny, I actually didn't know that it was on TV, but I caught it just in time for Bobby Wagner winning the Walter Payton Man of the Year award and his acceptance speech, which I know we have it. It's long. I'm going to say it's 5 minutes long, right? Something like that.
It's like 3.5, yeah.
3.5, and it was at the very end of the show. Like, I think they went over the time, but they didn't interrupt him. They didn't play any jingle to say, hey, wrap it up. But it was very moving. It was very good. This guy just obviously is one high quality human being and beloved by people in the game. You can tell that, and by coaches. It's going to be an interesting call on Bobby Wagner, whether or not they want him back. And are willing to pay him, and whether or not he wants to play again. And if he does want to play, does he view this situation as the best situation? Because when you get to his point in his career, you want your best opportunity to be playing this Sunday. He may not view Washington as that. Speaking of this Sunday, Redfins kicking off an even bigger game during the big game. They're giving away $1 million home in an epic, never been done before scavenger hunt, all on the Redfin app. Watch closely. The home is hidden in Rocket and Redfin's commercial during the big game. The winner will be the first to solve 6 clues and find the $1 million home on the Redfin app. Download or update the app to play Redfin's Great American Home Search, presented by Rocket. I wanted to just mention something real quickly because I saw this in John Kimes' story. John did a story on ESPN.com about just the big decisions. We've talked about a lot of these decisions, but there was a sourced piece of information in here from John that I thought was interesting, and it deals with Zach Ertz. One league source said Ertz does not want to end his career with a torn ACL, which he suffered in Week 14. Ertz said he loved playing in Kingsbury's offense, and reuniting with him could be a possibility. But so far, Kingsbury remains unemployed after parting ways with Washington in January. It is interesting how many of those players on offense really loved Cliff. So Ertz, I can tell you this, if they don't have Ertz, they got to find somebody like Ertz in terms of the ability to be a big, reliable, pass-catching tight end. You know, Jaden, I don't think he needs that, but I think it goes a long way in their offensive success next year. Now, it will be a different offense to a certain degree, but a big old tight end that's reliable and is going to be where you want him to be, matched up against linebackers who might be in some cases 3-4 inches shorter. Ertz was valuable. He was a valuable, a reliable, a disciplined target for Jaden Daniels and Marcus Mariota, who's very productive as a pass catcher, not so much as a blocker. Be nice if they could find the 6'5", 6'6" inch, get separation, tough matchup for backers, safeties as a tight end, but can also be a blocker in the run game. All right. Jaden Daniels was out at Radio Row or wherever he was. That was Radio Row. Pro Football Talk was there, correct? The Florio group. And made the rounds, and we've got some sound of Jaden Daniels talking, first of all, about David Blau being elevated to offensive coordinator.
He's going to throw his own flavor on there. Obviously, he's been around Cliff for 2 years, so what he's learned from Cliff is probably some stuff he's going to integrate in the offense. He's been around Ben Johnson. He's been around a lot of guys, so we talked about it. I've been very vocal, like stuff I want to do. He's been open, like he tells me all the time, like, you know, we want to build this offense for you. So that's kind of what a quarterback wants to hear. And you know, I'm super excited for him to get his opportunity. I know what he can do. I know the work that he puts in, because me and him sat up there constantly, had conversations, and we talk all the time. So I'm just super excited to get back out there. You know, when we got OTAs, we got mandatory minicamp to really see, you know, what he's cooking up.
Yeah. He's been very vocal about what he likes to do. Look, Cliff said over and over again, Jaden's not bashful when it comes to what he likes and what he doesn't like. I don't think that's going to dictate or influence Blau's, overall direction. And by the way, Quinn's direction, which is why he probably moved on from Cliff and went with Blau. I don't think we're going to see Cliff's offense the same with just a different play caller. I've said this several times since the Blau elevation. If you go back to his influences before he got here, the single biggest difference, forget the under center versus shotgun, which is a big difference. Under center versus pistol, I think a lot of people around the league will tell you there is a difference, but it's not as significant as really more under center versus shotgun. Pistol, you've got the back behind you. You still end up turning to hand the ball. It's not a mesh handoff like it is with a shotgun with a back standing to your side. You're also not as deep in the pistol. But I think that the biggest difference will be we're going to see many more play action pass attempts. And it'll be married, hopefully, much more to the run game. Kyle, Sean, that marrying of run game to pass game, being able to get a defense to see pre-snap, post-snap, a run, and then all of a sudden it gets pulled and he's out on what, the Shanahans call quarterback keepers. For us, they're bootlegs. Imagine Jaden Daniels, with a running back that has, picked up 4 or 5 runs of 4+ yards, and now he's pulling it after an under center or even a pistol snap, and he's pulling it, and we're going bootleg. And you got the multiple, levels of options, including, by the way, the option of him just keeping it and running it 8-9 yards and out of bounds, untouched. We didn't see a lot of that, We didn't see a lot of play action. Washington was, with Jaden in 2024, 20th in the league in play action pass attempts. And then this past year, with primarily Marcus Mariota at quarterback, more so than Jaden, we had, in terms of snap count, we had 27th in play action pass attempts. Kevin O'Connell, Ben Johnson, they've been in the top 2 or 3 every single year in play action pass attempts. Ben Johnson last year in Chicago, number 2 with Caleb Williams. So I think that's what we're going to see, and that'll be a big difference. And man, that's an offense that I think will look really good on Jaden, or an aspect of the offense that will look really good on Jaden. This was Jaden talking about Drake May, the guy that got picked right after him in the 2024 draft, as we all know, getting ready for his first Super Bowl game.
All right, how much do you pay? I mean, you, rookie, NFC Championship game. Now the other guy in your class here, he goes, I'll see your championship game. I'm going to go to the Super Bowl. How do you, first off, do you stay in contact with any of and do you realize how special your class is?
Man, yeah, I talk to Drake all the time.
Do you?
Yeah, I talk to Drake all the time, and I'm super happy for him.
Yeah.
What he's been through in his career and what he had to deal with last year, now to see him be able to play in this game, one, is nothing but motivation for me.
Yeah.
But 2, I'm also super excited for not just him, but our whole quarterback class that we got, and what we could do and what hopefully we could accomplish, in the future.
It's crazy.
That was Jaden on Drake May. It's a different day and age, and it has been for a long time, so it's not that different anymore. But players, they compete, but they're also very friendly with one another. And that class is, the most quarterbacks ever taken in the top 12 in the history of the NFL draft. We will be talking about that 2024 draft for years to come and comparing these guys. And certainly the early, comparisons are Jaden, Caleb, and Drake. How should that order have gone? And after 2 full regular seasons and on the verge of 2 full postseasons, most people at this point would probably go Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams. That's my guess. That most NFL fans, most NFL analysts, if they were redrafting the 2024 draft outside of the market, we're talking about national, I think it would go Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams. I think that's the way it would go. Don't you think, Max? I think Caleb would be behind Jaden.
Yeah, I mean, with the playoff run that Caleb had this year, I could definitely see the recency bias putting Jaden at third around like the league. But at the same time, if you keep in mind what he did in his rookie year, I'm going to still have him at 2. So I think you're going to see a little bit of variance, just given how well Caleb and Drake have played as of late.
Yeah, I think that you're right. There would be a recency bias in that Green Bay playoff game, et cetera, and even the Rams playoff game, and what happened at the end of that was pretty impressive. But yeah, I mean, look, you could do this every year for the next 5 years, and I bet you each year at the end of the year, it's going to be a slightly different order. I think, by the way, what would come after those 3 would be Bo Nix, Penix Jr., and J.J. McCarthy would be a distant last among the 6. I don't think there's any doubt about that. By the way, what other quarterbacks were taken in the draft? Spencer Rattler was taken, right? Who else was taken in that draft?
In 24?
First round.
Bo
in
Nix.
24.
Yeah, Bo Nix, Michael Penix.
No. After the 6 in the top 12.
Spencer
Rattler
was
like
in
the
there.
next one, right?
Yeah, Rattler was in there.
Here it is. Spencer Rattler, Jordan Travis.
Yes. Now retired Jordan Travis.
Joe Milton, who's
still kicking around. I think he's in Dallas.
Well, is Milton in New England?
He was, but I think he's in Dallas now.
Okay.
Yeah, he is in Dallas now.
And then Devin Leary and Michael Pratt were the Pratt was the Tulane quarterback. Leary was the God, I've got the list of quarterbacks, not their schools. Devin Leary, Kentucky, yeah. Joe Milton is right now on the Cowboys roster. Why didn't Brian know that immediately?
He did. That's why that's why I confirmed.
I didn't hear that. My fault. All right. There were awards last night. The honors ceremony, MVP, Coach of the Year, Rookies of the Year. We'll go through the winners when we come back. This Sunday, Redfin's kicking off an even bigger game during the big game. They're giving away $1 million home in an epic, never-been-done-before scavenger hunt, all on the Redfin app. Watch closely. The home is hidden in Rocket and Redfin's commercial during the game. The winner will be the first to solve 6 clues and find the $1 million home on the Redfin app. Download or update the app to play Redfin's Great American Home Search, presented by Rocket.
All right, happy Friday, everybody. We start off with the NFL honors that were last night. And the MVP race was a tight one, decided by one singular first place vote. The final tally, Matt Stafford had 24 first place tallies. Drake May, 23. Josh Allen with 2. And Justin Herbert comes away with 1 first place vote. Some other awards last night. Jackson Smith-Njigba wins Offensive Player of the Year. Myles Garrett setting the sack record, earning himself Defensive Player of the Year. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Tet McMillan. And Carson Schwessinger wins Defensive Rookie of the Year for the Cleveland Browns. Coach of the Year is Mike Vrabel. And Bobby Wagner wins the Walter Payton Man of the Year award for his work in the D.C. community and beyond. Plus, the Wizards last night, they get a win over the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference, defeating the Detroit Pistons 126-117. Will Riley sets a new career high with 20 points. Plus, the Caps, they win in Nashville last night over the Preds, in part thanks to Jacob Chikrin's 2 tallies. He sets a new career high in goals with 21 so far this season. Caps win 4-2. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch programs like Take Command all off season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us, and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
Congratulations to Bobby Wagner, who won the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. His acceptance speech was, 3-4 minutes long. It was moving. He was phenomenal. He's obviously a very, thoughtful, smart guy who, by the way, just got his master's. I forget what he got his master's in from.
He was
Howard.
an MBA.
Yeah. I'm happy for him. It'll be so interesting to see what they do with him this year. But yeah, well, good for him. He is, I think, the first recipient of this award for the Skins. Actually, Darrell Green won the award. How about that? Darrell Green won the Walter Payton Man of the Year award all the way back in 1996, it says. And it says Theismann won it in 1982. Wait a minute. There was a Walter Payton Man of the Year award in 1982? Or it was just the Man of the Year? It was the Man of the Year.
Probably.
And then it became the Walter Payton Man of the Year probably a few years, maybe immediately after Walter Payton passed away. So Theismann won it in 82. Darrell Green won it in 96. And now Bobby Wagner wins it in 2025. Of course, the big, topic here since the regular season ended, MVP. Max, why don't you give me the final breakdown in voting? Matt Stafford won it, but it was close.
It was close. So it came down to one first-place vote. So Matt Stafford came away with 24, winning the MVP. Drake May had 23, finishing right behind him. And then Josh Allen earned 2 first-place votes. Finally, Justin Herbert gets 1 first-place vote. And I believe that the voter has already come clean and announced who they were. It was Sam Monson who picked Justin Herbert to win MVP.
We've had Sam on the show many times. Sam was with PFF. Now he's with that 33rd team, right? I'm pretty sure. I really like Sam a lot. Like, he's been one of my favorite guests to have on to talk football over the last 3-4 years. Whenever I first sort of found him, I'm not saying I found him, others found him, but I think I heard him, on some YouTube show, and I reached out, and he's come on, once or twice a year for the last 4 or 5 years, I think. He's Irish, came to the U.S. Something like 20 years ago, lived in Minnesota, but was always an NFL fan. He's excellent. I really like him a lot. And I can appreciate him coming clean as the Justin Herbert 1 vote. He did it on Twitter last night. He tweeted out, "I was the Justin Herbert vote. The guy had the worst offensive line in the NFL all season. And despite that, he was working miracles in almost every single game. Stafford's offensive line became 2/5 as bad as Herbert's for 5 minutes, and he became a turnover howitzer. Herbert embodied value. Value in quotations is part of the MVP, valuable player. Appreciate the fact that he disclosed he was the guy. Look, I'm not going to get into most valuable player and the definition of it, but even if I thought about Justin Herbert overcoming everything he overcame, which is true, he had a horrendous offensive line. You saw it in the playoff game. We saw it against our team early in the season. I mean, that was a game in which I remember our coaching staff, Witt Jr. and Quinn, they, I think, in some ways were fooled into thinking we got a defensive football team this year. With Jaden back on the field, we can certainly score with anybody, but I mean, we made it very difficult on the Chargers. They ended up Washington in that game. Remember, picked off Herbert. They had a fumble in the game on Quentin Johnston. Remember that big hit, which was a massive play in the game. But they were just absolutely shredded up front, and it made everything much easier because Washington's best players on defense were up front. Kinlaw, in particular, and at that point, still Dorrance Armstrong. So yeah, they looked good against the Chargers. I still, that would be a reach for me. Like, to me, if I were looking at a guy that elevated everything around him to a much higher level, I would have pointed to Josh Allen and said, this was not a great football team around Josh Allen this year, not even close to what it was last year. And look at what they were able to do. I mean, this is just for everybody's knowledge, and you probably know this already. It's a regular season award. Nothing that's happened post matters. They voted on this at the end of the regular season, so they couldn't be influenced by playoff games. I mean, Josh Allen had, I think, one of the great playoff games we've seen from a quarterback in a long, long time in that win against Jacksonville. Another team, by the way, that was outstanding defensively. So that was the one Herbert vote. Stafford won by one vote, and I saw Sam took an absolute beating on Twitter from Drake May people to say, hey, man, that cost Drake May at least a co-MVP. Well, who's to say that, Drake May would have been his second choice? And by the way, 24, 26, 27 votes against Drake May. Overall, 23 for him, first place votes, 24 for Stafford. So that would have obviously carried the day. But anyway, I think Matt Stafford was the MVP this year. I think he was the best player at the most important position in the league this year. And if I had a vote, I would have voted Matt Stafford. And I would have gotten into the numbers, and I'm positive I would have found some numbers that would have supported Drake May for sure. An EPA number certainly would have supported Drake May. There were other numbers that would have supported Drake May. But with my own eyes, watching what Matt Stafford did, with, by the way, an outstanding supporting cast around him on offense in particular, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, those tight ends, a running game. But I think Drake May's weapons were incredibly underrated this year. I think what they did with that roster in one off season, and then adding a new coaching staff and adding an offensive coordinator who's always been elite, I think he benefited from all of that as well. And I would have just pointed to, look, the schedule was a difference maker for sure. They played the weakest schedule we've seen in a long, long time. And he benefited from that. There's no doubt he benefited from that. The team benefited from that. I would have voted Stafford, and I wouldn't have given it a second thought. Of course, I would have given it a second thought and thought it through, but it would have been, for me, by a lot. I think Stafford was the best player in the league this year. And remember, he entered the league hurt, the league season hurt. He had back injury issues, and there was talk, remember, about Matt Stafford getting, dealt or retiring. Remember, they didn't have the contract completely buttoned up until May or June of last offseason. It'll be interesting to see if he comes back. If he does, the Rams, once again, if he plays 17, they're going to be a Super Bowl contender. I wish this were a matchup between Stafford and May on Sunday. And that's not really what the matchup would be, because I think the Patriots are much more than May. And I think the Rams are a little bit more than Stafford, but not a lot more than Stafford. I'm not saying if you plugged in another quarterback into New England's team this year, they would have had the same results. I think Drake May had a great season and really showed he's going to be a really good one. But Matt Stafford, you take him out and put Garoppolo in, and that team, no. That team would have won 9 games. They would have been long gone in the postseason. And it's too bad that they're not here. Although I still love the matchup with Seattle and New England. So I think they got it right. And people said it was going to be a very close vote, even though Stafford was kind of a sizable favorite, right, Max? Going into this last night?
Yeah, it was pretty slight. I think it was like Drake was probably around plus 150 to plus 180.
Oh, I thought it was even more than that.
It's been coming down over the last couple weeks, but like at the beginning of the playoffs, it was sizable.
He won by 5 total points, and the first place votes were 24-23. And then Josh Allen had 2 first place votes, and Justin Herbert had 1. Christian McCaffrey finished 4th, by the way, points-wise, and Trevor Lawrence finished 5th in the voting. All right, so what award do you want to go to next?
Let's go to
Rookie of the year.
Yeah, we can do offensive or defensive rookie of the year, or do you want to talk about Myles Garrett winning defensive player of the year, setting the sack record?
That was by a mile, right?
Yeah, it wasn't.
What was the final
close.
vote? I mean, I can't imagine that Will Anderson Jr., as great as he was even that close.
I don't have the final numbers in front of me. I have the ESPN article pulled up, and they don't have those up yet. So I don't have the final tally. But
was Myles Garrett unanimous? Does it say unanimous winner?
It does not say unanimous winner.
NFL MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year voting. Myles Garrett, unanimous.
Okay.
All 50 first place votes.
Fair enough.
All 50. Will Anderson was second, and no one else. Micah Parsons third, Nick Bonito fourth, Aiden Hutchinson fifth. But Myles Garrett ended up with 500 points in the voting. All 50 people voting for Myles Garrett as Defensive Player of the Year. So that is now his third Defensive Player of the Year award, I think. I think he's won it 3 times. Myles Garrett is going to leave the game in 3 or 4 or 5 years, whenever it is, as one of the greatest defensive players that's ever lived. And the problem with it is that people will completely miss it because he was on such bad teams. You know, you knew that Lawrence Taylor was one of the greatest ever, in part because he was, but also because they were really good teams. And they were really good teams around him. I mean, that was a great defense around him. Leonard Marshall, Harry Carson, etc. You know, an offense that was solid with Phil Simms and Joe Morris and Bavaro, etc. Well-coached team. I mean, unbelievable stability in the franchise. Myles Garrett's played for one of the most dysfunctional franchises that's never had anything resembling a quarterback on offense good enough to make them competitive. Now, a couple of years ago, they were in the postseason. But Myles Garrett's truly one of the most dominant defensive players in the history of the game, and clearly a first ballot, although how can you say that anymore given what Belichick just went through? But Myles Garrett, first ballot Hall of Famer. We've seen in the last 20 years, last 15 years, 2 of the greatest defensive players in the history of the game play, Aaron Donald and Myles Garrett. You know, it just seems like in an era of unbelievable offensive football, we've actually had 2 of the greatest defensive players in the history of the game playing. Aaron Donald obviously got the team success. Myles Garrett hasn't. Maybe Todd Monken will turn that around. Oh, I'm glad Will Anderson finished, you know, with a sizable advantage at number 2, because he's coming, man. Like, this dude is going to be 3-4 years from now a guy that we're talking about in the same way. I think he's that good. All right, we'll get to some of the other award winners. Then we'll get to a Super Bowl preview and even a pick. I've got smell test info coming up this hour as well. Ben will join us at 12. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. Don't forget, you can watch the show on the Team 980's YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button when you get there. This Sunday, Redfin is kicking off an even bigger game during the big game. They're giving away $1 million home and an epic, never-been-done-before scavenger hunt, all on the Redfin app. Watch closely the homes hidden in Rocket and Redfin's commercial during the big game. The winner will be the first to solve 6 clues and find the $1 million home on the Redfin app. Download or update the app to play Redfin's Great American Home Search, presented by Rocket.
Sonny Jurgensson probably played as well as anybody on Sunday after having a long visit to the local lounge on Saturday night.
Sonny Jurgensson got the most out of life and an 18-year career in the NFL. At the height of the Cold War, Jurgensson's right arm was Washington's most dangerous weapon. Touchdown passes, many still regard Jurgensson as the greatest pure passer of all time.
There's been a lot of people who can throw the football, and there's probably some who could probably throw it further. But I haven't seen anyone who could handle a football in the manner that the redhead could. And I've often said he could hit a net at 50 if he wanted to.
It was Bobby Mitchell talking about his quarterback, Sonny Jurgenson. We are shifting gears here this morning because it was just announced by Sonny Jurgenson's family and by the team that number 9, the greatest quarterback in the history of the franchise, passed away. I'll read the statement from the family of Sonny's. It is with profound sadness that we share the passing of our husband, father, and grandfather, Sonny Jurgensson. We are enormously proud of his amazing life and accomplishments on the field, marked not only by a golden arm, but also a fearless spirit and intellect that earned him a place among the legends in Canton. But to those of us who knew him beyond the stadium lights, he was the steady, humorous, and deeply loving heart of our family. He lived with deep appreciation for the teammates, colleagues, and friends he met along the way. While he has taken his final snap, his legacy will remain an indelible part of the city he loved and the family he built. We are comforted by the knowledge that he brought joy to so many. This weekend, as we enjoy the game that he loved so much, join us and raise a glass, share a story, and a smile as we celebrate the extraordinary life of a man who was, to us, the greatest of all time. Rest in peace, Sonny. Wow. You know, I think a lot of us and a lot of you out there have probably thought about this day at some point, which is why, you know, there was such a rush to get the jersey retired while he was still with us. So many thoughts right now. Let me read quickly from Josh Harris, because the team just put this statement out from the owner of the team. Sonny Jurgenson is and always will be one of the defining legends of Washington football. He was a brilliant leader, Hall of Fame quarterback, and had one of the best arms the game has ever seen. After his career on the field, Sonny's voice became a fixture of Washington Sundays for decades, shaping the way generations of fans experience the game. For me, Sonny was the embodiment of what it means to don the burgundy and gold, tough, smart, and endlessly devoted to this franchise and its fans. He was a giant of the game and a beloved part of our team's identity. Our hearts and prayers are with Sonny's family, friends, and everyone who loved him. Sonny is, let me just say, football-wise, Sonny is certainly in the conversation and probably would be the person that I think many who watched him would say is the greatest Redskin in the history of the franchise. He's the greatest player to ever play for the Washington Redskins franchise. That would include anybody that's come since the team name went to Washington Football Team and then to the Commanders. Sonny was, as people have said over the years, you know, if you watch an NFL Films show on Sonny the player, you know, gunslinger, but the greatest among the greatest pure passers in the history of the game. Sonny threw the ball. It was the most beautiful ball you could imagine. The mechanics, no matter what his size was, no matter what the body type looked like, the mechanics, the release, and then the way that ball flew through the air. He, Marino, Aaron Rodgers, Joe Namath, add maybe one or two other guys, that's the list of the greatest pure passers. I'm not saying the greatest quarterback, greatest pure passers ever. Sonny was a phenomenal all-around athlete. I'm sure you've seen, the NFL film stuff of him in training camp or him in a game when he was with the Philadelphia Eagles, throwing behind the back passes, perfect spirals, perfect accuracy. Sonny was a phenomenal high school basketball player growing up in North Carolina. He had Division I offers from everybody, including North Carolina, coming out of a high school in the Carolinas. He could have played both sports. Sonny was an incredible athlete, unbelievable hands, as an athlete, the way he threw the football, the feel he had for just sports in general, which is why somebody with Sonny's body type overall, at 6 feet and whatever the weight was, and it probably fluctuated here and there. And he talked often about Lombardi, not really caring necessarily about the weight, but he got in the best shape of his career anyway when Lombardi came in. But Sonny was an unbelievable all-around athlete and an incredible player for the Redskins after getting traded here in 1964. Traded for, God, we just talked about this trade. Oh, in the wake of the Anthony Davis trade, somebody was listing the best trades in the history of the city. Look, one of the greatest trades in the history of the city in terms of it working out for one of our teams, April 1st, April Fool's Day, 1964, the Redskins send Norm Snead and Claude Crabb to the Philadelphia Eagles for Sonny Jurgensson. And then through the 60s, man, and 64, 65, the list goes on. You look at the prolific numbers for the time that Sonny put up as a quarterback, but on losing teams, in the 60s. But in 1967, Sonny threw for 31 touchdowns. Nobody was throwing for 20 touchdowns. Few were in that day. 31 touchdowns, 3,747 yards. He was approaching 4,000 yards a full decade and a half before anybody thought about it. See Dan Fouts. I think Fouts was the first to do it. The Lombardi year. I mean, I the only thing I'm going to mention just about my interaction with Sonny is it was incredibly surreal for me. Growing up in Washington and being in a family that was, all about the Redskins, season tickets, my father, my uncle. My uncle was the biggest Sonny guy of all time. I got a football that my uncle had before my uncle passed away, signed by Sonny. And it was the greatest thing that he ever got. And my dad was kind of a Kilmer guy, but also a Sonny guy. But I sided with my uncle. I loved Billy, but I was a Sonny guy. And those days of being a kid in Sonny versus Billy, and yet they were the best of friends. But that battle, that rivalry, and the way it took over and consumed a city that really only had one real sports team. No baseball, in the early 70s. They had already moved, the Senators had, to Texas. The Bullets were still in Baltimore. The Caps yet to become a team in Washington. And it was all about the Redskins. And when George Allen arrived in 71 after the 69 season, which Sonny talked so many times over the years, I was so lucky to be able to host that pregame show for 13 years, which Sonny was a staple every single Sunday before a game. A producer would say, all right, you got 9 minutes with Sonny. And 20 minutes later, we would still be talking. It was my favorite part of the show. It was literally like sit down, take notes. But he would tell so many stories about Lombardi, and many of you have heard him. He's told them in so many different settings over the years about what he thinks would have happened to his career had Lombardi lived. He would have won. He would have won big. He would have become one of the all-time talked about winners in the history of the game. He was convinced of it. Everybody was convinced of it that played that one year in 1969 for Vince Lombardi. George Allen shows up in 71, and Sonny's, relationship with George Allen is a difficult one. Not only was there another quarterback, but George Allen was not an offensive quarterback-friendly coach. George Allen wanted to win with defense and special teams. He didn't want the offense to screw it up. Even with that said, Sonny had some moments during the George Allen years. You know, the 72 team, which was the first team to go to the Super Bowl 7, when they lost to the perfect Miami Dolphins. That season started with Sonny, and Sonny was coming on, and he got hurt in a game late October 1972, Achilles, Yankee Stadium against the Giants, and the rest of the way it was Billy Kilmer. And there was always the thought of, would the Redskins have won Super Bowl 7 with Sonny Jurgenson with more offense against that really good Miami defense? Well, yeah, more likely than not, they would have. Billy was an excellent quarterback, you know, and Billy, by the time he got to Washington, Billy was actually kind of a running quarterback and a mobile quarterback when he was the quarterback in New Orleans. But by the time he had come to Washington, and he had been, if you know Billy's story, in a terrible car wreck when, you know, in the 60s, but he had become a different quarterback. He was such a cerebral quarterback, and was probably, you'd probably say, more of a game managing quarterback, where Sonny was, we're throwing the ball down the field. I got Charlie Taylor. I got Roy Jefferson. I've got the best pass-catching tight end in the league in Jerry Smith. I've got Larry Brown behind me. He was the 72 league MVP. But after that, the Achilles, 72, Yankee Stadium, a game they won 23-16. And by the way, that followed a very, very big game that season against the Cowboys. It was the first of two matchups against the Cowboys in 72. This was one of those games where, you know, the whole country was watching. It was the 4:00 game on CBS. It was at RFK. The place was unbelievable. And Sonny started that game and led Washington from a 20-7 deficit to a 24-20 win. And it was like, all right, here we go. You know, Sonny's hot. The team's on fire offensively, and it was the next week that he tore his Achilles. Sonny got revenge for not playing in the Super Bowl against the Dolphins. He always described it as that was his Super Bowl game. 1974, it was October 13th at RFK Stadium, and the Dolphins came in to RFK, and it was the first time Washington and Miami had played since Super Bowl 7. Sonny referred to this game as his Super Bowl, his opportunity to play and beat the Dolphins, as I think he thinks they would have done in Super Bowl 7. And Sonny was unbelievable. Sonny was a big-time clutch quarterback. They took over with just under 2 minutes to go, trailing 17-13 at their own 20-yard line. 80 yards and a touchdown pass with just a few seconds left in the game to Larry Smith, and Washington won the game 20-17 against that Miami defense of the early to mid 70s. Sonny threw for 303 yards in the game and 2 touchdowns, including leading them on an 80-yard drive in the final 2 minutes to win the game. That was, he's told me and told many people, but we had that conversation about that game multiple times on that pregame show. And he said, that's the Super Bowl, and that's the drive. That's the game for me. And he had so many unbelievable games, and probably more prolific games, even statistically. But that was his Super Bowl game. That was also the final year of his career at 40 years old. And Sonny actually, you know, came into their playoff game that year in December of 74 against the Rams in the Coliseum, after Billy started and was ineffective, but it was a close football game. And Sonny, you know, generated some offense and got him moving, but had a couple of tough breaks, a couple of interceptions, one deflected, and a pick six that kind of ended the game. And that was it at 40 years old. What a career at 40 years old. I mean, Sonny Jurgenson, you know, a Hall of Famer, a 5-time Pro Bowler, you know, a member of the all 1960s team. By the way, he was an NFL champion on the 60 Eagles, not as their starting quarterback in the 1960 season, but as the backup quarterback. But a career that spanned, you know, 18 years. And it was so obviously a Hall of Fame career because during his entire career And for decades after, people remembered Sonny Jurgenson, even though a lot of the teams he played on weren't good. And when he got on a really good team in Washington, he split the time and actually played less than because of injuries. Separated shoulder in 71, the Achilles in 72. He split it with Billy, and there was this back and forth, but it worked for Washington during those years. They went to the playoffs in 71, 72, 73, 74. Sonny was on all of those teams and a big part of all of those teams. In 73, they played a Monday night game, the Walt Garrison-Ken Houston game, which is a famous game in the history of Redskins-Cowboys lore. It was a Monday night in early October. Washington, the defending NFC champions, against the team in 71 that had been not only the NFC champions, but the Super Bowl champions. And Washington's rivalry with Dallas was raging. And Sonny, in a famous game, was solid and threw the only offensive touchdown pass of the game for Washington in the fourth quarter, down 7-0, drove him down the field, hit Charlie Taylor for a touchdown, and then they scored on a Brig Owens fumble return, and then got the stop with Ken Houston on Walt Garrison at the goal line in one of the most famous games, one of the most famous plays in Redskins history. But Sonny was the starter, that night in 73. He started a lot of games during the George Allen era, but was hurt a lot. And when he wasn't hurt, there was always a Billy or Sonny this week. And that's what started the incredible, discussion in town. What a time it was. I was a kid, young. These are my first memories of sports and of the Redskins. 71 on. And it was the end of Sonny's career, but I knew Sonny. I mean, he was a big part of the conversations, as he was for every Washington family. He was so smart, so interesting, so thoughtful, and had a phenomenal memory on so many things for so long. The Wilt Chamberlain 100-point night was preceded by a celebrity game between the Eagles and I forget who they were playing in the celebrity basketball game prior to that night. But Sonny was there for Wilt's 100. The greatest night points-wise in the history of the NBA. He played in a basketball game before that in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And he talked about, that night many times. I'm sure I asked him about how many points he had in the celebrity game prior to that. And I bet you he had a lot because he was an incredible basketball player. And look, there's a lot of Sonny Jurgenson memories that are all about Frank, Sonny, and Sam, and the unbelievable broadcast career that he had. Let me just say this. It started on television for Sonny. Sonny immediately, in 75, was one of the key voices. He teamed up with guys like Vin Scully on CBS's TV coverage of games. You can still, if you go back on YouTube and you find a game from like 75, 76, 77, those years, Sonny's one of the lead analysts because he was such a sharp football analyst. He was so good at that. On TV, excellent on that. Called some big games during the mid to late 70s. And then obviously starting in 78, 79, it was, Frank, Sonny, and Sam. And that is the all-time legendary broadcast, play-by-play analyst team in the history of this town. They guided our way through all of the glory years of Joe Gibbs calling all of those games. And you've heard the story, those of you that are younger that don't remember this and probably can't even fathom the idea of this. But you were, as a fan of the team in the 80s and even going into the 90s, you'd actually put a radio in the room with you, and you would listen to the call of the game that you were watching on TV and turn down the TV volume because you wanted to hear Frank, Sonny, and Sam. If you went to those games, you always had a transistor radio next to your ear so you could listen to what Sonny would say after a game, after a play on offense, and what Sam would say after a play on defense. What a pleasant person, too. I mean, it's surreal again for the opportunities that many of us had to work with him and to see him in that way. Sonny would sit outside the broadcast booth and smoke a cigar before the games would start, and it was Tommy would be there smoking a cigar with him. Tommy and Sonny would sit down and smoke cigars together. A few hours before kickoff. He was such a nice person, such a pleasant person, so smart and really thoughtful and a great memory and funny, great sense of humor. It was really, Tommy and I did this Lunch with a Legend series for about 6 or 7 years, where a couple of times a year we would take a DC sports legend. We did it at Morton's down on Connecticut Avenue, and we'd sell tickets to it, and it would be a 2-hour show with lunch, and people would watch the show live. And if you ask Tommy, you ask me, one of the top 2 or 3 that we ever did, and we did everybody but Sugar Ray Leonard. That was the only DC sports legend we never got to do. But the 2 hours with Sonny were a treasure. It's somewhere. I have it somewhere, and I'm going to dig it out at some point and probably bring some of it. But Sonny's Mount Rushmore for our franchise's history. It's not even debatable. If we're talking just players, it's Sonny, it's Sammy Baugh, if we're going to go back that far. It's Riggo, it's Darryl Green. Bobby Mitchell, the impact that he had is certainly in consideration. Art Monk is in consideration. But Sonny may be the most beloved athlete in the history of this city. It's been a long time. It's been 52 years, 51 years since he played, football. And so there are so many generations that have heard stories but can't really put it in its proper context, especially given that a quarter of a century with Dan Snyder as the owner of the team, we lost so many fans and we lost so much of the passion or generations to kind of grow up with the team, to be more interested in the history of the team. But Sonny will go down, I believe, and I've always said this, along with Riggo, as the most beloved athlete in the history of this town. You want to throw coaches into the conversations, of course, Joe Gibbs and John Thompson, become part of that conversation, and Gary Williams, et cetera. But if we're talking about just players, Sonny's the most beloved player in the history of this town. I think that's true. I mean, Riggo is close, and as Darryl Green, got up to 15, 16, 17, and finally 20 years with the same franchise, he certainly enters the conversation. Alex Ovechkin, and being one of the greatest to ever do it in his sport, in the conversation. But in terms of the visceral, emotional attachment and feelings for Sonny Jurgenson, I don't know that other than Riggo, anybody comes close in the history of this town. Wow. I mean, I think I knew, and a lot of people knew, that this day would be coming. Sonny hasn't been well for the last couple of years. And all I can say is just an absolute legend, and rest in peace, Sonny Jurgenson. We'll open up phone lines, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Your memories of Sonny Jurgenson, who passed away at the age of 91 years old.
At 0-4, it appeared as if the 1964 season was gone. Then the Eagles came to town.
Before a sellout crowd at D.C. Stadium, the Redskins tackle the Eagles. Washington and Philadelphia traded quarterbacks during the offseason, and this will be their first confrontation. Jurgie steps to the firing line. Sonny hurls a honey to Bobby Mitchell, and it's touchdown, Washington. Jurgie is making the Eagles eat crow as he passes the Redskins to a fast 14-point advantage. Adolph Christian's Sonny Jurgensson throws his 5th touchdown pass of the game as he lays it on the Eagles with a scoring shot to Taylor. Jurgensson wins the battle of the quarterbacks, and Washington wins the war 35-20.
That was Sonny's first season in Washington and his first matchup against his former team, the Philadelphia Eagles. Sonny Jurgensson passed away at the age of 91 years old. We're talking about it right now. I know the phone lines are packed, but Frank Herzog is going to join me right now. Of course, the legendary Frank Herzog, part of the legendary, iconic booth of Frank, Sonny, and Sam. You knew him so well over the years, and I literally also just got off the phone with Billy Kilmer, and he's, crushed right now, and said, he'll come on maybe next week to talk about Sonny, but I wanted to get your thoughts. I thought of you immediately. Frank Herzog with me. Your thoughts on Sonny Jurgensson?
Damn it, I thought he'd live to make it 100. I really did. He was so good. I said, I'm 91, no problem. He's got 100 made. So it's a shock, and I'm sad. And I really feel for Margot and his boys and the whole family, because I know it's been a tough time for them.
Yeah.
It is for any family. Listen, I was a fan of Sonny Jurgensson. I want you to understand that. I was a broadcast partner too, but I was a fan. I loved everything about the guy, everything he did. He was an amazing passer. The first time I saw him play, I sat in the New York Giants team seats at RFK Stadium with my wife, who'd gotten tickets through her father. And that's when I first saw him play. And I couldn't believe his timing on passes and his accuracy. And it went on and on. He became really a valuable partner for us. And I'm going to miss him.
Yeah, everybody is. Tell me about, because you and I have talked about this before, and you've been on the show, and when Sonny's jersey was retired, I think was the last time you were on, and it was 79 when you took over. For those that don't know, and I just always like to remind people that Frank Herzog was the voice of the Washington Bullets when they won the NBA title in 1978, right, and was such a good basketball play-by-play guy as well. But when you took it over from, I think it was Dan Lovett, maybe from Channel 7 in 1979, that first year was, remind me, was that first year just you and Sam, and then Sonny joined the next year?
Just Sam and I, yes.
Yeah,
and
then
the next year, the general manager, Andy Ockershausen, came to us, and Sonny had a contract with CBS Television.
Right.
And it ended, and he was a third man in the booth with Tom Brookshire and Pat Summerall, and he was really good.
Really good.
But CBS cut him off, and so Andy came to us and said, "What do you think about a third guy in the booth?" And we both looked at him. What? He said, "I'm talking about bringing Sonny in." And we went, "Do it. It's good. You think there's room for 3 guys?" He said, "Yeah. I don't think it's going to be a problem." And then Sam looked at me and he said, "You think Sonny's going to be all right with us?" And I said, "Listen, he's a pro. There's not going to be any problem." So he came into that first game. I think it took 1 quarter for him to feel out the rhythm and the body language and everything else. And from then on, it was a piece of cake.
Yeah, you were just reminding me of something, although I don't know. I mentioned that Sonny was so good calling games with guys like Vin Scully, but I didn't remember him, I don't think I did, as a part of the Summerall Brookshire group. Sonny with Glenn Brenner in the 70s into the 80s, and then, after obviously Glenn passed in 1991 with George for all of those years, and then with you on radio calling the games. But in many ways, during those years, in addition to the games, Sonny and Glenn had this rapport that was just incredible when he came on to talk about, the Skins on Fridays or Mondays, following a game.
It was fun to talk with Glenn because you never knew what was going to happen. And I think Sonny really enjoyed that, the spontaneity. But listen, he works with Glenn. He worked with George. He worked with us on the radio. He was multi-talented. He was very, very good and very reliable. He broke up with Channel 9. They tried to negotiate a new contract for him after Glenn had died.
Yeah.
And they said, here's our offer. And he said, just understand, give me one offer, and it better be the right one. If it's not, we're not going to talk again. And it wasn't. And he said, that's it. I'm not coming back. And they said, well, we have a do not compete clause in your contract. No matter where you go, you're going to have to sit out for a year. And he said, okay. And he went to George. George signed him, and he sat out for a year. When he decided to do something, Sonny Jurgenson did it. That it was firm. He was the most competitive person I think I ever met, and he was a great joy to be around.
Frank, remind me of something. It's a bit off the subject, but not really. When Glenn passed, did Warner Wolf come back to Channel 9 immediately for a few years? Would Sonny have worked with Warner Wolf on Channel 9, or am I missing somebody in between?
No, Sonny, it didn't make any difference who it was. If Sonny didn't get the contract he wanted, and if the offer wasn't good, he wasn't going to take it. And that's the way it was. And I think he was so hurt by Glenn's passing, I think it would have been hard for him to work with anybody.
And then, of course, in addition, again, to the games and it being must listen to, and we all turned down the television volume and turned up the radio even for road games. And for home games, I had a transistor radio up to my ear, in section 513, row 13, as everybody else did, listening to it. But, that Redskins report show with Sonny and Riggo and Wilbon and George was must watch on Saturday nights, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
What do you remember? Are there stories that you remember being in the booth, leading in, being on the road with Sonny and Sam? There have been many that I've heard over the years, certainly with Sam, trying to go after the guy in Chicago. But give me some Sonny stories that you can recall.
Well, one of the things I'm going to give you a fact, and maybe a trivia fact that you don't know. In all of his years at Channel 9 and at Channel 4, he never picked against the Redskins.
Never. That's true.
Never.
Yeah.
Because he loved the Redskins. He loved them because they took him in when Philadelphia kicked him out, and they embraced him, and he had great players to play with, and he loved it. And so every time I would go, they were going to go against somebody, and I'd say, down deep inside, they're going to get killed. Sonny would go, Redskins will win this one. They can do it.
That was it was death taxes, and Sonny's going to pick the Redskins on George Michael's Redskins report. No doubt about that.
You know what? Nobody cared. No, it didn't bother anybody because it was Sonny. If that's what Sonny felt, well, maybe he was right.
Frank, I said this in talking about Sonny before bringing you on. I think Sonny's the most beloved athlete, beloved team sport player in the history of our city. I think Riggo might be right there with him, but for so long it was Sonny number one. Do you agree with that?
Now you got me thinking. Because what I was going to say was, in the 60s and 70s, he was the sports hero.
No doubt.
There were a lot of other guys, a lot of other athletes in this town, in Washington, who were very, very good. A few made the Hall of Fame, but Sonny was different. Sonny knew how to beat the Cowboys.
Yeah. Yeah, he did. You know, he talked often about, you know, missing the Super Bowl in 72 against Miami, but his Super Bowl game was a few years later against Miami in the regular season when he beat him at RFK. I would imagine that, you know, having worked with Sonny for as long as you did, when you'd go into, you know, other cities, other NFL cities, Sonny was an attraction, especially for players and former players. You know, because you saw it sometimes even, you know, at FedEx or RFK, that there was a real reverence for his talent as a passer. Wasn't there?
Yes. And every time we'd go to a visiting team, we would walk out on the field before the game, an hour and a half before the game, just to check game conditions. And there would always be a great player or a great coach who would see him and come right over and shake his hand and chat with him because they wanted to be with Sonny. It was amazing. We even we're sitting in Cleveland one night, and a man walked up with his son, and he said, "Excuse me, Mr. Jurgenson, but is your first name Christian?" And he said, "Yes, it is." He said, "Well, I'd like you to meet my son. His name, too, is Christian." And so Sonny said, "Well, isn't that great?" And he shook the kid's hands. And Sam Huff looked at me, and he said, "They always name their kids after the quarterbacks. They name their dogs after the linebackers."
What a pairing those two were, you know, with you, and they're together again now, both of them, arguing about offense versus defense. Those were some of the best parts of your broadcast, where, you know, Sam would say, "We can't do it without the linebackers and the defense," and they'd go at it on that broadcast. It was the all-time iconic, legendary broadcast team, you with Sonny and Sam calling Skins games for all those years. Thanks for making time, Frank. I really appreciate it, and very saddened for your loss and everybody else's.
Thank you very much.
Frank Herzog, everybody. Sonny Jurgenson passed away at the age of 91 years old. All right, if you want to weigh in with your Sonny memories and your thoughts, 301-230-0980. This Sunday, Redfins kicking off an even bigger game during the big game. They're giving away $1 million home in an epic, never been done before scavenger hunt, all on the Redfin app. Watch closely the homes hidden in Rocket and Redfin's commercial during the big game. The winner will be the first to solve 6 clues and find the $1 million home on the Redfin app. Download or update the app to play Redfin's Great American Home Search, presented by Rocket. Sonny Jurgensson passed away today at the age of 91 years old. We are talking about truly one of the greatest to ever do it. He is right there with Marino, Namath, Rodgers in terms of just pure passers in the history of the league. He was a prolific offensive machine and show, really, in the 1960s. Still to this day, up until this day, Sonny would have told you if Lombardi had lived, he would have been an all-time winner as well. George Allen came in those years with Billy Kilmer at quarterback and Sonny at quarterback. Washington obviously had great success, but he tore his Achilles in 72, the year they went to the Super Bowl, and he wasn't able to play in that Super Bowl. Many people think, including yours truly, that they would have won Super Bowl VII had Sonny been the quarterback. And that's no knock on Billy, who had an unbelievable season that year. But when they got behind 14-0, Sonny was more equipped to bring him back because Sonny was the better passer. And George Allen was a conservative coach, so they approached every game that way. In many ways, it's why George often preferred Billy over Sonny. He didn't want the risks. He didn't want the gunslinging from Sonny. And Sonny's, relationship with George was always an interesting one because of that. Riggo's relationship with George Allen was interesting because Riggo was a fullback under George and didn't carry the ball as much as he would have liked to after he came from the Jets. But they won a lot with George, with defense in particular. But truly one of the greatest to ever do it in our city, a Mount Rushmore given, and very debatably the most beloved player, athlete in the history of this town. Rest in peace, Sonny Jurgensen. We just had Frank Herzog on the show. Joe Theismann's going to join us in about 15 minutes. But we'll give you guys a chance on the phone lines at 301-230-0980. A sad day for certainly people of a certain age. And I think many of us knew this day was coming at some point. Frank said would have loved to have seen him live to 100. I would have loved to have seen him calling games the last many years. But let's start with my guy Kevin in Arlington, because Kevin's my age and remembers Sonny and understands what this day and this passing means to a lot of us.
Thank you, Kevin, for taking my call. Indeed, it is a sad day. Sonny was my hero. He was your hero. He was so many young boys and girls' heroes here in Washington, D.C. Just a couple of real quick personal notes. I happened to share a birthday with Sonny, August 23rd, and I always loved that just because I thought it was so neat that my favorite player had my birthday. And I was a fourth string quarterback, Kevin, fourth string, buddy, with the O'Connell Knights.
Fourth string. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I was a freshman at Bishop O'Connell in Arlington, fourth string quarterback. And I don't know why, but the coach must have taken pity on me and he gave me Sonny's number. I had number 9. So, I just, so many of my memories tied up with the Redskins as him as a player, as him calling the games with Frank and Sam. I mean, he was really something. You would always see him around town too. Well, I spent a lot of time in Georgetown. I know you did too, as a former bartender there at Third Edition. But Sonny was well known, and even in Philadelphia when they traded him, the story goes that the bartenders in Philly wore black armbands when they foolishly traded him south to the Redskins. So Sonny knew how to have a good time. He was smart as a whip, as you said. He just was he was breezy. He was just cool, and I was very honored to be a fan of his and to have experienced all his winning. And I guess the only other thing I would like to say is, and it's a really pretty powerful quote. It came from Vince Lombardi, who he did have the 1 year together with before Coach came down with cancer, unfortunately, and was taken from us. But he said, heck, if I'd had Jurgie and Green Bay, we would have never lost a football game.
Exactly.
And
he had Bart Starr.
The last thing is that 74 game in October at RFK versus the Dolphins, who were two-time defending Super Bowl champions in that game. That was a hell of a game by Sonny, pulling it out at the end. And Yeah, Larry Smith is the answer to the trivia questions. A lot of people don't remember, but I'll never forget that game, and I'm glad he got that one sort of gotcha in his resume. So thank you for taking my call, Kevin.
He loved talking about that game. Anytime anybody brought it up, but I remember a couple of times bringing it up with him, at an event that I was hosting or moderating with him and Sam, which the radio station did a ton of times during kind of the 2010s or on the pregame show. That was his Super Bowl. He went into that game knowing that was his Super Bowl. It was his opportunity to prove what would have happened against Don Shula's 72 team. And look, the Dolphins, you could argue, in 73 and 74 were better than the 72 team. But 80 yards, final 2 minutes. Larry Smith on basically the final play. I think it was 3 seconds left in regulation to win it 20-17. If you're on hold, thanks, Kev, by the way. Thank you. I got a break. If you're on hold, stay there. We'll get some calls in, reaching out to others to try to get them on the show. Joe will jump on with us, Theismann, in about 15 minutes. But we'll get some of your calls in next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. We're also on the Team 980's YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button when you get there. And this Sunday, Redfin's kicking off an even bigger game during the big game. They're giving away $1 million home in an epic, never been done before scavenger hunt, all on the Redfin app. Watch closely. The home is hidden in Rocket and Redfin's commercial during the big game. The winner will be the first to solve 6 clues and find the $1 million home on the Redfin app. Download or update the app to play Redfin's Great American Home Search, presented by Rocket.
was an opportunity to play for a team that I had grown up just seeing on television.
You know, we had a good group of guys, good teammates. We fought hard. We didn't have the greatest record in the world, but the people enjoyed us. They backed us. They cheered for us because each and every week we went out and laid it on the line and entertained them, played as hard as we could.
Sonny Jurgensson passed away at the age of 91 years old. We are remembering Sonny, in my opinion, the most beloved athlete, pretty close. If he's not at the top, he's right there in the history of this town. Certainly in the 1980s, if you took that poll, Sonny would be number one. And we're missing him right now on the air, and somebody to remember Sonny and played with him, and of course knew him very well over the years, with both of them giants in the broadcast industry, you know, after Joe's career, as well as Joe Theismann joining us right now. So your reaction to hearing that Sonny passed away, and thanks for doing this, of course.
You're welcome, Kevin. I'm I feel saddened. I knew Sonny's health was failing, and I saw him over the last couple of years. He always had that smile, and he just, resiliency was a big part of who he was. And I enjoyed the short time I had a chance to play with him. I mean, I learned a lot from he and Billy, just a few stories that I remember one day at practice in '74, because I only played that 1 year with him. I remember in practice, and I said to him, Sonny, how do you throw the ball so unbelievably well? I mean, the spiral was majestic. It would just sort of float through the air. He said, well, Joe, he says, I take the ball and I put my hands on the laces. I put my fingers on the laces. I take my arm back and I let it go. And I thought, wow, I just got a lesson from the Dalai Lama of pass. I mean, it was amazing, because he would step to the left, and that little belly of his would sort of lean, and that ball was like almost sidearm.
Right.
But he was incredibly accurate, and it was a treat to watch in practice. I mean, I got a chance to see it every day. And, and I'll tell you another one. And this is really the first interview that I've done, so I'm probably going to wind up repeating this through the course of the day. But so we, many years when Sonny was, in broadcasting, doing some stuff. And so I was in broadcasting, he was in broadcasting. And we were out at Redskin Park, and, we were going out to practice together. And I said, Sonny, I've heard that you and Billy really didn't like me at all. That, you guys really, really just almost hated me. Is that true? He said, oh yeah. Oh yeah. And the funny thing was, as I look back in hindsight, I came to town, I made this statement. Billy and Sonny, they competed against one another for the job. But then all of a sudden, I think I galvanized that friendship, because I was that odd individual that came in and said, hey, I didn't come here to sit, I came here to play. And I think that truthfully pissed them off, which I know it did, as a matter of fact. And so, it was, Billy and I competed more against one another over the next 2 or 3 years.
Sure.
But Sonny, I never really had a chance to compete against him because, like I say, the Dalai Lama of pass. And George Allen had a certain way. Sonny could throw the ball, like I said, better than anybody in football. Billy was a tough, hard-nosed, gritty quarterback. I learned an awful lot from both of them. And George sort of favored, I think, Billy to a degree, because throwing the ball around, George felt like a lot of bad things could happen.
Right.
If you ran the football and played great run defense, which was his philosophy, then you had a better chance to win. And, Bill used to go out there and just absolutely compete like I've never seen a team get behind their quarterback and play like our team did for Billy. I was a little bit on the outside observing all of this. And Sonny, it's almost like Sonny's on the field, we're fine. He'll take care of it. Billy's out there, just showing that grit and toughness that he has. And the guys just said, okay, we're going to get behind the guy. I mean, they're both very different in what they did, but both of them were incredible assets to this franchise.
You were there in 74. And by the way, you did play. You were a really good punt returner in 1974
right. 2 years,
as the third string quarterback. But, Sonny over the years would really, the eyes would roll a little bit when we would talk about the George Allen days, because George wanted his quarterback to do anything but put the team in harm's way. It was defensive and special teams led. Do you remember, that dynamic of George and Sonny, because George played Sonny a lot. And look, I'm a believer, and I felt this way my entire life. It's not because Billy wasn't a good quarterback. He was. But when they fell behind 14-0 against the Dolphins in Super Bowl VII, Sonny's the guy that could have brought us back, not Billy. And I think Sonny always felt that was a Super Bowl, had he been healthy, for he could have led the Skins to a win. But do you remember the George Sonny thing? Because I always got the sense that Sonny, those weren't his favorite years.
No, the thing is like I said, I think Sonny scared George. That wasn't his philosophy. Coaches have a way of approaching games and the way they want their team to play. We see it today. Even today, I think Sonny's ability to throw the football, and from a perspective of a lot more bad things can happen when you throw the football than if you just run it and play great defense. And now, George created the nickel defense, not the one we see with defensive backs, but the one we see with 5 down linemen.
Right.
So, it was all part of Coach Allen's philosophy to be able to do the things that he was, he believed in and had great success with. But I mean, it was a football team of characters. I mean, I was fortunate in Washington to play with characters both through the 70s and the 80s. I mean, and Bill and Sonny were a big part of that. Like I said, they were, they're legendary, both on the field and off the field.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, you span these two, groups of winning teams, the Allen years, the Gibbs years. Obviously, you spearheaded the Gibbs years, but characters on both of those teams. So Sonny retires in 74 at the end of that season, which was your first season here. And in
Right.
76, 77, 78, it's you and Billy. I mean, that's the debate, Billy or Joe, when it was always Billy and Sonny. You had a relationship with Sonny. He was a broadcaster. He did a lot of the games. Did your relationship change with him starting then, or was it later?
No, it wasn't. It was never a bad relationship. It was, I was the kid. I was the one sort of the odd guy out. I had 3 horses for a while. 2 of them I got together, and then I got one came a year later. And I always remember at the ranch, looking out into the fields, the 2 that were together, okay, they just, Tardy and Chaka, they would just sort of hang out together. And the other one was sort of off to the side by itself because he hadn't been accepted necessarily into the fold. And after a while, everybody grazed together. But in Billy's and Sonny's case, they were very good friends, great competitors, great friends. And I was that kid that brash kid that came in and, was boastful in a way where it pissed everybody off.
Right. But what I'm wondering, Joe, is as you're taking control of the reins of this team and then you start winning, you win a Super Bowl. And, look, it's Sonny and Joe Theismann. I mean, these are the 2 quarterbacks that are the greatest in the history of our franchise. And, Sonny's calling all these games. He's in the building every day. How did your relationship with him evolve as you became the guy and Sonny became older as a broadcaster?
Well, the thing is, I played with Sonny. Remember, I played with him at the end of his career.
Right.
He had that 1 year, so it really wasn't a question of competition for us.
Sure.
And Sonny was the true professional. Brought a lot of insight to the games, and he and Frank did that. And it was fine. We had a good relationship. It wasn't like, we'd walk by each other and nobody say anything to anyone. It wasn't that kind of a relationship. It was just that, we didn't hang out together. I mean, he did an incredible job, I think, introducing people to our game, to be able to enlighten people on what he saw through his eyes.
Was he, over the years being him in that building a lot with all of the different coaches, Was his presence felt? Was he influential in anything over the years? I remember, the Snyder first year when he brought in Jeff George and the discussion that Sonny was like, that dude can throw the ball almost as well as I can, and being enamored with it. Did Sonny have, influence in that building, over the years?
I don't necessarily think so. I think the coaches and the GMs, appreciated anybody who had played there.
Yeah.
But they had their own way of doing things. And, it was our job basically to be able to continue to just, inform people of what's going on the field, philosophies, some of the things that we did in comparison to what they were doing now. You're sharing information that's been accumulated over time. But as far as, coaches, no matter who's there, they want to do it their way. They don't necessarily go out and seek your knowledge to say, okay, hey, what do you think we ought to do?
You've already talked about how well he threw the football. I mean, you look up a list of the greatest pure passers in the history of the game. It's Marino, it's Rodgers, it's Joe Namath. Sonny's always on that list.
Absolutely.
I mean, where do you think of him in terms of the history of this game? What was his lasting impression on the NFL? He's in the Hall of Fame, obviously, and deservedly so. What do people in the game, quarterbacks in the game, what do they say when they talk about Sonny Jurgensen as a player?
Well, you've got to go back a lot of years because remember, there's quite a few years have gone by. So, you don't necessarily get to see some of the guys that played against him that much. I know that he was incredibly respected. Just anybody that ever, you mentioned Sonny's name and they'll say, man, nobody threw the ball like him. Nobody threw it like him. I mean, accuracy. The thing is there's a difference between a thrower and a passer. Sonny was a passer. He could throw it as hard as he needed to, or he could put as much touch on it as he needed to, which is something we don't see today in some of the young guys. Some of the guys have one gear, just rocket ball. And in Red's case, it was, it was, like I say, a pure passing clinic when he worked.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, some of the old NFL films highlights of the behind the back passes but just the regular passes.
That's another thing. We used to, I'll never forget the first time I saw that. We were warming up, before a game.
Yeah.
And Sonny was throwing a ball and he threw one behind his back. And it just like dropped into Charlie Taylor. And I went, wait, hold it. I didn't see this. Did I? Wait, hold it. Time out. I said, Sonny, did you throw that behind your back? Oh yeah. It's like, yeah, I do that every day. And he did. And he used to do it in practice too.
Like you, and because Joe was a phenomenal all-around athlete, basketball, baseball, and football. But Sonny was a D1 college basketball recruit by the University of North Carolina and a lot of other places. Like Sonny's always said that he goes, I'm not sure if I wasn't, as a high school kid, a better basketball player than I was a football player, and probably would have been a better college basketball player than I was a college football player. I always found that incredibly interesting. But he was that all-around athlete like you were.
But it was undeniable, his athleticism. And it was, his ability. I'm glad he decided to do what he did, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But he, I mean, a lot of guys, you look at the background, a lot of guys that have played this game and have had degrees of success. It isn't just football. It's especially a diverse background, whether it's basketball or baseball. Yeah. For us, there weren't four sports. There were three sports, and each of the seasons sort of went along. But that's the way it sort of went for us. And I loved baseball. I had a chance to go pro in baseball and decided on football. So I'm glad I made my decision, and I'm thrilled Sonny made his.
You're the best for doing this on short notice. I appreciate it. And I know it's a sad day for Skins Nation for sure, even though it was a day we knew was inevitable, but it still hits hard when it happens. Thanks for doing this. Hope you're well.
Yeah, but Kevin, there's so many wonderful memories that he leaves behind, and to Gunnar and the family, my prayers go out to everyone.
Indeed. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
You bet, buddy. Bye.
Joe Theismann, everybody. More Sonny talk coming up. Just waiting to hear back from a couple of other people. If you're on hold, I'm going to try to give you guys a chance as well. And yeah, we will make a Super Bowl pick at the end of the show. But this was a day that I think a lot of people knew would come. And wow, yeah, to Gunner, to Margot, to the whole everybody in the family. Our sympathies for sure. Sonny Jurgensson has passed away at the age of 91 years old. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Hall of Fame President Jim Porter just put out a statement. That would be the NFL Hall of Fame. He said, quote, few players could rival Sonny Jurgenson's genuine love of the game that continued long after his playing days, whether he was standing tall in the face of an opposing lineman as a quarterback for the Eagles and Redskins for 18 seasons, or later as a beloved broadcaster in Washington for several more decades. Sonny captivated audiences and introduced generations of fans to the sport. Watching Sonny throw a football was like watching a master craftsman create a work of art, closed quote. If you're just joining us, Sonny Jurgenson passed away at the age of 91 years old. And joining me now is Doc Walker, who did not play with Sonny, but certainly got to know Sonny very well over the years as Sonny called games with Frank and with Sam Huff starting in 1980. So your thoughts on a day like today, Doc?
Well, Kevin, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm sorry that it takes a tragedy for me to get on the show, but
okay,
it's this guy's special. I'm gonna be rejoiceful because of what a thrill he was.
Yeah.
And you know a lot of people that in our world are in high positions of prestige. They've earned it and they're there, but it's just your dog. It's just a dude to you. But on the outside, people flip. Anywhere you go into anywhere with Sonny, it's like you're in Hollywood and you were the celebrity. You know, he's one of those guys that was just a badass who was comfortable within his skin. And now we've known a lot of people that are very good at what they do, and most of them, a large majority of them are jerks. This guy was cool as a whistle.
Yeah,
it's just.
He was one of the callers, I think it was Kevin in Arlington, said Sonny was just cool, and nothing about his presentation, his body type would suggest that, but he was. And look, you are, I often refer to you as an NFL historian, and you remember all of the great ones. And in all seriousness, because you were such a big football fan, but you grew up on the West Coast, and it was, it wasn't until, 1979 that you arrived here. Did you know how great Sonny was as a sports fan, as a football fan growing up in LA?
Well, I heard it because of Philly. It's not like he was on Super Bowl championship, World Championship teams. But I knew the arm, and because he was an arm talent. He wasn't running.
No,
the teams weren't really good, but everybody kept talking about this brother who's threading needles. And because of Brig Owens, that was my connection. And that, these are defensive people, and they love him. And more than that, in 1972, when they came, they stayed at Saddleback Inn in my hometown.
Before the Super Bowl.
Because of Brig, the Super Bowl against Miami. And so I had a chance, having been through Brig, and just knowing that you have somebody from your hometown that's playing pro ball, and he's with the Skins, and when they come out, one of my childhood buddies, best friend's father was a chef there. So we got information. We got to hear a lot about. They were kind of like a team that I adopted at that point in time. Plus, it was just cool. They had spirit. They played defense. These guys were older. They just had something about them. And everybody kept saying, oh, man. But if Sonny was and Billy's a Bruin, so we loved him. But they were all saying, man, but if Sonny. And then to meet Roy Jefferson and meet these guys out here and have them talk about how Charlie Taylor, Charlie was one of our coaches.
Yeah.
So when you get this inside scoop about this guy, everybody said the same thing. That when you're in the huddle with him, you just feel like it's going to work. And not everybody does that. And I had that honor of being in the huddle with Joe T. And Theismann has that same trait. that it doesn't matter what the odds are about it, that if we're in this and we follow what we're supposed to do, we're going to win because he's not going to fail. That a lot of people talk that even, and you're a coach. You can't coach that into some kids. They either have it or they don't. And I don't care what the body type is, what the athleticism deal is, Sonny had it. And then to be covering the team and to see him throw the ball behind his back. When you hear that a guy can hit a moving target 45 yards downfield throwing it behind his back, what do you think?
Yeah, it's really, they're on social media right now, a lot of the highlights of Sonny throwing the football and the behind-the-back pass that he actually threw in a football game when he was a Philadelphia Eagle. I mean, the body type didn't say this guy's the greatest pure passer or one of them in the history of the game. But, where did it come from? I mean, it was just the perfect throw, arm strength, wrist.
Athleticism.
Yeah, he was an athlete, man.
He's an athlete.
You
might not have thought of him as a hoop player. He could hoop. You might not have thought of him. It reminded me a lot of Mahomes. That's why I always felt like Mahomes was the closest to Sonny to me. Because he doesn't look the part.
Right.
Until the game starts. But it's what you can put within your teammates. Theismann's leadership skill, it's not about going out to have a cocktail with you or going out to the movies with you. It's about when I need you and we're on the road in Philly or Dallas or New York, that dude gets in the huddle and says, okay, let's go do this. And you just know that if you don't F it up, it's going to work. That's the trait that, and all these young quarterbacks now that have been paid way before the puberty, they don't ever get a chance to develop it. But a guy like Sonny, coming up in a basketball environment, had to hoop, had to be able to do all this stuff. But this ability, and then the relationship with Billy is also what makes, and then Joe, Joe was the third leg in his wheel. So I've got data. I've got so much, back data on this guy, and then his family and his sons, and then Larry, then the booth, the relationships, all those sub-stories that happened, as you well know, as you and I did pregame forever. And so we were always there early. You were always around the SJ9. Will it be lit today? All these things. And I haven't even had a chance to settle in on it and think about it because it kind of caught me off guard because they would say, how's Sonny doing? What's Sonny not doing that well? What are you talking about? It's Sonny. So if he'd have still been alive at 120, I'd have said, okay, you haven't shocked me because he was that kind of dude. And to be able to, as you well know, once you get behind the curtain and all this stuff, and you're doing dinners and breakfasts and you're hanging out and you're getting a chance to really see a guy with his guard down and then doing the shows and working with George.
Yeah.
And you remember how big Sideline. You remember all the shows.
Oh, I mean,
how big.
Well, Sidelines with Glenn, his relationship with Glenn was just, it was unbelievable. But when Glenn passed, and I had Frank on last hour, Herzog, and, he talked about, the battle with Channel 9. I guess there was a contractual battle there, and then he sat out a year and ended up with George. And that Redskins report with George and Rigo, Sonny, and Wilbon was an absolute must-watch. And look, you did so much with them, and were such a big part of the broadcast team when Larry was in the booth with Sonny and Sam, and it was big, larger than life. I mean, he really was.
Yeah, it is, and that when you travel, you see a different side of people.
It's sometimes not for the better.
Well, I'm just saying, but you get to see the whole package.
Yes, you do. Yeah, that's true.
So if a dude is cool, he's cool when he wakes up. He's cool before he goes to sleep. He's never not cool, and he's never caught off guard, and it's not an act. The thing about him, to me, that was always refreshing is that, man, he'd been this dude for so long. It's almost like Hollywood to me. People that they call them movie stars, well, they get used to that. So they're not caught off guard. They're comfortable within the position. Sonny was always comfortable. And he was always the straw that turned the drink. When he walked in the room, Sonny. And really, we went through some lean times, as you well know, with our football coverage.
Yeah.
our product wasn't always the best.
No, it was not.
You know, and so
as you said, it was good. It was good Monday through Saturday. Sundays were the problem.
Was our worst day. Yeah, it was our worst day.
Yeah.
But with him and then Sam, and having gone through this like with Sam, and you know, that booth, man, Frank. I mean, it was just really, you know, you grew up in this, you know more about it than I do. But it's just having been an outsider inside and going through it, they could have easily been jackasses, jerks. You know, they weren't. They were embracing. The one thing that George Allen instilled that I really appreciate and I miss so much is that George made it very clear that everybody wore that uniform was family. And it was different, man. To be here was different. And you knew it. The chants, the songs that they would do after the game. Nobody else was doing that mess. And it wasn't fake. You know, it was real. The way we covered special teams, the way we played special teams in this town has not been equaled. You don't need a Heisman Trophy winner to do that. You know, it's an attitude.
You've said this so many times, and it really started with Sonny, you know, because post-career, staying in Washington and being a part of this community and Redskins and this Redskins fan base was, you know, like none other. And you know, obviously Sonny was incredible in leveraging that post-career you know, broadcasting second act. You've done the same thing. Joe's done. I mean, the list goes on. And it started with just this town and the support it had for the team.
Yeah, but you're also it's your obligation to continue in that spirit. Same way Roy Jefferson does. The way that Brigg was doing, the Larry Brown, everybody. And that's the whole thing about the commitment and George Stark, who does not get half a quarter of what he really deserves, because he was part of the Over the Hill gang as a rookie, and then he was our senior guy.
Yeah.
So he spanned all of that, and he did it in a leadership way that will never be equaled.
Joe
because
did
there was
too.
No group, but there was no group that he was alienated from. He connected, and he made sure he dug them rookies out, got them babies going the right way. So they knew what the obligation meant when you're in this town. Somebody calls you, they need you to go, you there. There was no no-shows.
Sonny, had he been the quarterback, he would have been in the 5 o'clock club. No doubt. He would have been welcome.
He's doing whatever he wanted to do. It's like Riggo. Certain guys, you know, they're in whatever it is, and nothing said about it. There's not even no words are needed, because and that's why no matter what your relationship is with John is always, if you need him, you'd have him. No doubt about it. He's a team guy.
Yeah.
And people would take a blow so he wouldn't have to take the blow. And that's the way it was. And he would do it back. That's the thing about it and look, these guys are getting paid. I ain't mad at them. But I don't think they'll ever, because they don't have the base. See, without this fan base is fractured now. This is 50% of what it was.
Right.
They ain't seen this thing at full horsepower.
No,
full horsepower? Man, please. No, they're tickling themselves now. They don't get it. But if they can ever get it back, then they'll understand what horsepower looks like, what it feels like. You know, and there's only so far you can go if you don't really appreciate what burgundy and gold means. They would start if you could get the damn colors right.
Yeah.
That would be a step in the right direction.
Vince Lombardi once told Pat Pepler of the Green Bay Packers head office, quote, if we would have had Sonny Jurgenson in Green Bay, we'd have never lost a game, closed quote. And he had Bart Starr, but Bart Starr was completely different than Sonny as a player.
Yeah, two different guys. Now, I don't know if 9 wanted to be up in that ice box.
Right.
But you know, but he can throw, guys that can throw in good weather, bad weather. They can just throw. The only person ever even reminds me of him, and I can't say him in the same sentence, because One guy is a team guy, Sonny, and then Aaron Rodgers. I don't know what Aaron is.
But man,
But I know that
Rodgers,
arm talent,
Marino, Sonny, Namath. That
talent, man.
Yeah.
Ooh, you see it too when you're there, and especially if you see it from the sideline. You know, the sideline has a lot of things that you don't get anywhere else.
Right.
It's ground level, and you see things that you don't see from other positions. And I would tell you all the time, I knew who was blind. We've had some quarterbacks here that have been blind because I used to stay in the end zone. So I'm seeing people running wide open, waving their arms, and the boy throwing the ball somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I go right before my eyes, I go, he's blind. No, we don't have to name him. But we knew who's blind and who's not. And so that sideline, man, and that's where Sonny, man, seeing the field and then being able to do something about it. Watching Matt Stafford's career, I mean, this season, last season, that's like Sonny-ist. That, if you want to
they're very similar.
Go back. Thank you. And if you agree with me, wow.
Okay,
let's
stop
we're
it.
headed.
All right. This has been great. And thank you, by the way, for doing this and being available.
No,
I
I'm
wasn't
just sorry
sure that
somebody's got to die for me to get a chance to be on the Kevin Sheehan show.
Okay.
I was just, it's just, it gets old. It really does. You know, I'm never going to say no. And you just do this to me because you know
this
you
is
can.
this is not the moment. This is not the day for this, even though we are celebrating Sonny's incredible life.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. I will talk to you later. Appreciate it.
I hope so.
Doc Walker, everybody, as we remember the great Sonny Jurgensson, who passed away at the age of 91 years old. There are statements coming from all over the NFL on Sonny's passing. For those of you who don't know, this is a legend of the game. And for people of a certain age, and I'm not talking about fans, I'm talking about players and coaches, he was must-watch TV. He was that good at playing quarterback and throwing the football. There was just something truly special and otherworldly about the way he threw the football. So we'll share some of those statements. I know there have been a bunch of you on hold, and I apologize. I'll try to get a call in or two. We're going to pick the Super Bowl game in the last 2 minutes of the show, and I'll have a smell test pick for the game as well. Speaking of the game, this Sunday, Redfins kicking off an even bigger game during the big game. They're giving away $1 million home in an epic, never-been-done-before scavenger hunt, all on the Redfin app. Watch closely. The home is hidden in Rocket and Redfin's commercial during the big game. The winner will be the first to solve 6 clues and find the $1 million home on the Redfin app. Download or update the app to play Redfin's Great American Home Search, presented by Rocket. Window Nation's got a great deal going on right now. Buy 4, get 4 free, and you don't have to pay anything for 2 full years. No money down, no monthly payments, and no interest charged for 2 full years. Take advantage of it. If you need new windows, now's the time to get them out there to give you a free in-home estimate, so there's nothing to risk there. Call them at 866-90Nation or head to windownation.com. They'll come out. You'll actually find out which windows need to be replaced, and then they'll schedule a time to do it. But you can shop the quote that you get from them. I don't think you'll find a better deal. You certainly won't work with a better company. 96% of their installs go off without any sort of issue. They require no follow-up service. They've got 45,000 five-star reviews, and Forbes magazine ranked them number 1 nationally among window installation companies. An estimate is 30 minutes or less. It's free of charge. That's all I ask. If you've been thinking about new windows, schedule that free in-home estimate right now at 866-90Nation or go to windownation.com and take advantage of 4 free with every 4 purchased. Add to that a 10% discount for Valentine's Day. You'll take that as well. And don't pay anything if you don't want to for 2 full years. This Sunday, Redfin's kicking off an even bigger game during the big game. They're giving away a $1 million home in an epic, never-been-done-before scavenger hunt, all on the Redfin app. Watch closely. The home is hidden in Rocket and Redfin's commercial during the big game. The winner will be the first to solve 6 clues and find the $1 million home on the Redfin app. Download or update the app to play Redfin, Great American Home Search, presented by Rocket Mortgage. We have not talked about the Super Bowl game once the news broke that Sonny had passed away. That very justifiably has been the show, and I appreciate Frank Herzog jumping on, Joe Theismann jumping on, Doc Walker jumping on. I did talk to Billy Kilmer during a commercial break, and he's pretty broken up about it, but hopefully we'll get Billy on at some point to talk about his incredible relationship with Sonny Jurgensson during really, an era that brought the Redskins into the position they've been now for 55 years, and that is as the number 1 product in town. The passion certainly isn't the same, as Doc said, and I agree with him, as it once was. But, man, for the better part of the last 54 years, it's been about this football team when it comes to, sports fandom and diversions and, passions beyond just your everyday life. And Sonny was really the beginning of that. For people older than me, they loved the skins of the 60s with Sonny throwing to Charlie Taylor and Jerry Smith and Bobby Mitchell. But when George Allen got here and they started to win, that was the beginning of it for real. And I'm sure that people like Bruce Allen, as an example, who was a kid on the sidelines watching those teams play and his dad coaching them with Sonny and Billy, and all the people that got to know him over the years are hurting today, but also have smiles on their faces because Sonny produced a lot of those as a player and as a broadcaster and as a friend to so many people. All right, let's do, I guess, real quickly here. We don't have to hit the sounder or anything, but let me give you an actual smell test pick on the game because I have one. Now, let me just tell you, the line's moving here, Max. You've seen it, right?
Quick.
There is sharp money moving this line down. It's been 4.5. There's even been a 5 or 2 out there the last few days. It's down to 4.5s and 4s. And even I see a 3.5 out there. So it's been 4.5. It's been out there at 4.5 much of the week, and I still see a couple of 4.5s. New England plus the 4.5 is the play. They're the anti-public play, and they're also clearly right now the play in which a lot of sharp bettors are wagering on them. So, 4.5 points I'm taking, and I'm taking the dog. And I see it this way. I see a Seattle team that hasn't played a defense like the defense they're going to face in this Super Bowl game. It is true that New England's defense didn't start off as a great defense, and even in the middle of the season may not have been great, but it's great right now. And I don't care who they played. It matters that they played a beat-up offensive line. They played a quarterback that tried to hand him the game in C.J. Stroud, and they played a backup quarterback in the AFC Championship game in Denver. But they were playing great defense down the stretch, and this is a very good defensive team that Seattle has not faced in 2 months, really since Atlanta or Minnesota, because the Rams' defense was falling apart secondary-wise. This matchup between Gonzalez and JSN is an unbelievable matchup to watch, but I think Vrabel will play it this way. They're going to line it up, and they're going to try to stop the run. They're going to take the run away, and they're going to say, Sam Darnold beat us. Play action, bootleg. We got guys that can cover, and we don't think with pressure you can beat us. And then on the other side, Matt Stafford shredded the Seattle defense in the NFC Championship game. He did the same 3 weeks earlier in that week 17, week 16 game. Drake May struggled against these three defenses, but I think there's a chance with their receivers, with 2 weeks of prep, that they're going to move the ball enough, and it'll look different than the Denver game, especially when the weather set in. So I like New England plus the points. I think there will be more points in this game than most are thinking. The total's 45.5. I like the Patriots 27-23.
Ooh.
Super Bowl winners outright. The pick is plus 4.5, but I'm personally going to play them on the money line as well. That's the smell test pick. That's my pick for the game. What's your pick for the game?
So, yeah, I'm taking the Patriots as well, but I am eyeing a ton of props. So a big stat that I do want to leave everybody with, the Patriots are 12-0 when Milton Williams and Christian Gonzalez have played this season, allowing an average of 14.5 points per game. That would rank New England as the lowest scoring defense in the NFL this season. So, with that said, I will be taking Milton Williams to record a sack, and I will be taking Christian Gonzalez to record an interception. Those are both plus money. Those are what I'm liking. And Ramondre Stevenson sprinkle 30-1 at Super Bowl MVP. Those are my what I'm looking at.
Good one. Should be a hell of a game. I think it's a much better game than a lot of people think. I'll just leave you with this. Sympathies, first of all, to the Jurgenson family and all of Sonny's friends, some of which, I know we have had on the show today, we'll have on the show. Personally, I'll just say it was a pleasure just to have the few chances over, a 15-year period to interact with Sonny. It was surreal, as I said earlier in the show, but he really was such a nice person and so interesting to talk to. And he will be missed, and certainly one of the all-time, if not the all-time DC sports legends. Rest in peace, Sonny. Chris Russell's next.